condition, because there is no sidewalk on the East Pond side, because he's got that big drop off, that embankment on the front side facing East Ponds. So yeah, that was part of the consideration for the whole thing. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of things. One, I thought that once you were granted, I mean, and all the variations and everything, I thought it had to be started a year in 12 months. Is that still viable? Or does it have to come back? Is it null and void?
It is.
Well,
You have a requirement, a time limit.
now as far as rezoning is concerned, I'm not sure that there is a reversion clause or
No, I meant
provision. Now, as far as being granted a land disturbance permit, yes, you're supposed to begin 120 days. That's 4 months.
So he has to come back for that, doesn't he?
Technically, yes, because we have gone past 120 days.
Exactly. So is this a moot point?
I'd like to make a comment to the council. Basically, the reason why they gave them the conditions for that sidewalk is because they were looking at future development of those other 2 lots back there. Eventually, you would put a sidewalk in and would join it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I go back to that point. Is it even a moot point right now because it's out of time range? And I remember being on planning and zoning and somewhere out of time range, they'd start all over again. I mean,
Well,
or do we not have time ranges for a reason or something?
Are we coming up on 1 minute?
Now, the other question I had is, I think the Cap County, any construction, I mean, you gotta put sidewalks in. Isn't that their criteria now? I mean, everywhere I go, I see some that aren't connected, but the idea is eventually where the guy next to it does it, then it's connected, et cetera, et cetera.
well, that's typical for most jurisdictions, yes, and I believe that's what we're trying to do here as well. But again, this is a request by an applicant that was brought before you, and they follow the proper procedure to make that request, and whatever happens next, regardless of what our recommendation or planning and zoning's recommendation is, it's up to you.
Got 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, I guess I'd want to know kind of what your feeling is about it, and also the conditions that were given based on the rezoning. Those were the conditions that were originally. So if you didn't meet those conditions, we're giving a variance on conditions that were approved for a rezone.
Well, it's not a variance, it's an amendment or a modification, so he's asking for a removal. So in a way, it's a variance, but technically it's a modification to the conditions or an amendment to zoning conditions. In a lot of jurisdictions, these types of requests go through an expedited review where they'll go directly to the governing body. So it would bypass planning and zoning or the planning commission and go straight to the council or board of commissioners, whatever type of jurisdiction you're dealing with, the head governing authority, and a decision will be made either there or they will table it or whatnot. The thing is, it will be designed to be an expedited process, and that's something that we probably have to talk about going forward to handle these types of requests. But to answer your question, as far as my feeling on it is. Not knowing the full history, the detailed, intimate pieces of the history regarding this request, just looking at it on the surface, I wouldn't think it would be that difficult to approve it. However, given the circumstances in which the conditions were made to begin with, the recommendation that's coming forward from planning and zoning is probably the most prudent.
Okay, you want to say something?
Just to clarify something, I'm sorry, but the sidewalk that he wants to do away with, that requirement, is that going all the way down to Mr. Turner's house at the?
No. Is that the adjacent property?
Well, he has 3 tracks. Is it just going down the side of the first track? I'm looking at it. That's an old hearing house. So it's just to the end of that first parcel on the corner, down West Smith Street, that he wants to do away with. And it's Also, it seems to me, well, it says on here existing sewer, so it may be on septic, but there is an existing sewer.
Yeah, there's a sewer line nearby he can tap into.
It's not difficult for him to connect both of those houses to the sewer.
No, it's just that there are fees involved, and as Mr. Mooney has demonstrated, he's trying to trim costs as much as he can.
I understand that. And it's a difficult property to deal with, and I kind of sympathize with the guy. But I think those two things, the sewer problem is pretty much solved. The sidewalk issue there, I think, maybe we could deal with, but that's all.
Thank you.
I just want to let you guys know that we denied that sidewalk because we felt like it was a walkway, a private walkway. So that's why we did it. And also we thought that with the future development plan, like there was supposed to be a turnaround at the end of that street, so emergency vehicles can come around. We wanted that sidewalk to connect, into the next property. So going on that basis, that's why we definitely recommended to have a sidewalk there. We felt like, I know a little bit of the past history of this guy, and we felt like, well, of course, after we gave him the subdivision, he definitely did a lot of work, a lot of work on the inside. There was a dumpster parked out there. There's a new restaurant hood vent on the second building. We felt like in a way, when we gave him the subdivision, we were like, hey, the city will work with you. We just need an honest type of rapport here, So we felt like, in a weird way, he was trying to get out of another thing. So we were like, this is supposed to be a public sidewalk. It can't be a walkway to your house, And also, like, it's saving the tree. Doing the thing about saving the tree, that's fine. If you guys have been down Houston Mill, there's a little bridge that goes over a specimen tree, and it's part of the sidewalk, So there's ways to make it happen, and it might cost a little bit more money, but in the grand scheme of things, if you develop things right, it's a lot better. So I just wanted to explain to you guys that we just felt like it was a private walkway to a residence instead of, like Dean said, a public sidewalk, and we felt like.
All right.
There needed to be a sidewalk.
All right, thank you, man. All right.
Also, I'd like to point out that this private sidewalk would still leave it up to the city in the end to put in a legitimate public sidewalk. And I don't think that we should be borne with that cost in the future.
All right, thank you. All right. We're going to move forward. Time constraints. Okay, the item D8, proposed public hearing for council meeting on 8, 9, and 12. Request the variance for section 710, 1008, 1009, and 1107 of Appendix A, zoning of the City of Clarkston's Code of Ordinances for property at 1125 North Indian Creek Drive. Mr. Bartlett.
Yes, again, this is...
Mr. Gaines.
Mr. Gaines, go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen. You also have information about this project in your package before you, this application in your package in front of you. This is for four separate variances at 1125 North Indian Creek Drive. Currently, Signature Auto Repair resides at that address. The first variance is to request to eliminate the requirement for a pedestrian-oriented building entrance on both sides of a building on a dual frontage lot. The second is a variance for the height range of storefront windows. The third is to eliminate the requirement for a loading zone not to face a public street. And the fourth is to reduce minimum required parking spaces from 33 to 27 based on the calculation of one space per 250 square feet of building area.
Mr. Mayor, Peter Lowry, Mr. Gaines, back up a little bit and for the purpose of the audience, give them a little background as to why these variances are being considered, and what's proposed on that side.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was jumping right into that. But that was a perfect cue. The property is currently zoned for the town center district, zoning district, and there is an active proposal to bring a Family Dollar retail establishment to that site. Site would consist of approximately 8,300 square foot retail store with, like I said, 27 parking spaces, loading zone, rear delivery door, not a dock, with a loading zone, and a currently proposed above ground stormwater detention facility on the rear of the Vaughn Street side, because again, this is a dual frontage lot with access on Vaughn Street and North Indian Creek Drive. The variances were requested by the applicant in order to help the client, their client, feel like they had what they needed to go ahead and build the site to their specifications while still meeting the spirit and intent of our civic design ordinance, or civic design guidelines that are part of the current zoning ordinance. Let's go into this a little bit more. I don't want to read the analysis verbatim, but just to kind of give a little more background on each variance, individual variance. You've got section 710B of the zoning ordinance, and it states that buildings in the TC zoning district that front two streets shall have pedestrian-oriented entrances from both streets. Based on the variance criteria, that's not something that's necessarily considered a hardship or an extraordinary or exceptional circumstance that prevent compliance. But I think it's a matter of interpretation. If you talk about two entrances, the building itself that's proposed is not going to actually front on both streets. It's going to front on the North Indian Creek side with a corner entry, a primary entrance that's on the corner of the building facing North Indian Creek Drive. Typically, they like to do an entrance that's oriented towards the parking lot itself, but in order to try to meet the spirit and intent of the town center zoning district and the civic design guidelines, they put that entrance further up so that it would be oriented towards pedestrians and autos that do use the parking lot. Also, they propose to do, of course, full sidewalk on both streets as far as the frontage is concerned, with walkways coming from that sidewalk directly to the main entry point of the store from both the North Indian Creek side and the Vaughn Street side. So that's how those were the provisions they made to try to meet the spirit and intent of that particular section of code.
Can we ask questions?
With the second variance, it's regarding the range. Yes, sir.
Can we discuss them item by item?
You want to do that? I mean,
I think that would be a little easier to keep track of.
Okay.
There's 4 big items here.
Okay.
I don't have an actual orientation of how that building sits on the lot in any of my notes, but their argument for not having another entrance on Vaughn Street was that they would have to stretch the building to hit both streets, and that would eliminate parking spaces, which I don't think is a valid argument. I think they want to do that just for security.
Yes, I was going to say yes. That's the other big reason. Yes.
So can I ask a question on this one item?
Yeah, if you're gonna do it single by single. I think just to be consistent with the policy that the board adopted, my recommendation would be have citizens take note of their questions. I think the policy is that the council get all their questions out first, and then citizens have an opportunity to have dialogue and ask questions. All right. I know it's more difficult when you got 4 different things, but take notes.
Okay, thank you, sir. The second variance is regarding the height range for storefront windows. That is covered in section 1008B4A of the zoning ordinance, and I'm trying to think of the numbers off the top of my head. I think it's no lower than 3 feet, with up to no less than 10 feet above the surface, the sidewalk in front of that building. That's the range and height for your windows. So they're supposed to be wide windows, if you will, and they're supposed to cover 65% of